Is scientism really a thing? Bobby Conway over at One Minute Apologist seems to think so, but he has an imaginary friend, so yeah, I don't know how seriously we can take him. This is exactly why we don't take the religious seriously. They're trying to run around with the goalposts without ever demonstrably having the ball. So, well, away we go. Now, this is a very common claim that somehow science isn't the only way we can know anything, that somehow religion is just as valid because it's the only means that the religious have for getting to their emotionally comforting blind faith. And this falls apart under even the most cursory of rational evaluation. I really believe is not the same thing as knowledge. Yet the religious have to insist that it is, because that's really all that they have. It just gets sillier from there.
What is scientism?
It's a made-up word that the religious have run around with to cast science as a faith. At least that's how it's typically used today. While there might be some credibility to the idea in general, certainly there have been some scientists who have been nearly deified and their works set far beyond reproach by their followers, but this is rarely the fault of the scientists themselves, and often they will speak out against such interpretations. Scientism is not science, but it's also rarely a credible criticism of science, as we will see going forward.
There are many people that will accuse Christians of being anti-science. And as a believer, I would say there's nothing in the scriptures that would lead us to think we should be anti-science.
Who gives a damn what your scriptures say? I mean, other than you. Because I certainly don't. In order for them to be useful, they must be demonstrably true, and we all know that's not the case. But it's funny that he claims that the Bible doesn't call on Christians to be anti-science, when Christianity has a long and dark history of being exactly that. Whenever science comes into conflict with their faith always wins. Maybe, just maybe, if you people used more scientific thinking and skeptical rationality, then you wouldn't be religious in the first place.
But I am anti-scientism. What is scientism? Scientism is basically the belief that science, or the hard sciences, can be the end-all answer to everything. That science can answer all of our big questions.
And I don't know anyone outside of the religious who actually think like that. Now, what is really going on here is the religious desperately want their own blind faith to be thought of on the same level as objective science, which simply isn't true. Now, I certainly wouldn't say that science can answer every conceivable question, but the questions that it can address, there isn't one, at least so far, where science hasn't been applicable. How many answers can religion demonstrably and objectively provide answers to? And the answer is 0.
And what ends up happening there is things like faith and belief and trust and all that just gets thrown into the category of you can never really know that. So all we're going to do is focus on what we can know through science.
That's a fair point, though, because when we're talking about knowledge, this isn't belief, not faith, but knowledge. You can't know any of the things that you purport to believe. The only thing he's doing here is trying to ride on the coattails of science under the guise of fair play. Well, it's just not fair that you have all the evidence and we've got nothing. We want to be credible too. Well, then be credible. But you don't get to be seen that way without earning it. Maybe you ought to get to work.
But there's a lot of things that we can't just prove scientifically, right?
Like what? Now, I'm not disagreeing with you. There are things that we can't prove scientifically, and really, nobody but you people seem to think that. But let's look at the kind of things that science and religion are saying, then see if any of those things are credible through a non-scientific lens. Because the claims that you are making are not claims that stand up to any kind of critical scrutiny. And to be really honest, I'm having a hard time thinking of much of anything that doesn't get impacted by science or scientific thinking. You know what doesn't? Made up things, imaginary things, things that the religious believe. And that's not because science can't address their claims. It's because their claims are nonsense and they are desperately trying to rationalize why religion is valuable in an increasingly scientifically literate world. Seems they're failing.
The statement that you can only prove things scientifically is not a scientific statement.
And nobody makes that statement except you. Of course, I still challenge you to come up with something objectively real, which can be demonstrably proven through any means outside of science. I don't think you can do it, and the reason that you can't is because all of these things to which you are emotionally attached, they only exist in your own head. They aren't real, at least not demonstrably so. That's why you're trying to make this absurd dichotomy that doesn't actually exist. It's all blatantly dishonest.
That's a statement that we would have to philosophically show.
What exactly can you show with philosophy that is actually demonstrably true? Not that you're making a case for, not that you're arguing about, but that actually exists in the real world. Because I've pointed this out many times before. You cannot philosophize anything into existence. But when that's the only tool you have in your arsenal, you start looking to use it on everything, and it just doesn't work that way. The claims that the religious are making, they are not amenable to philosophy. They are claims about reality, and the only tool that we currently have that demonstrably works to make determinations about reality is science. Let us know when you can philosophize a new species of wombat into existence. Then maybe I'll be impressed.
So scientism is basically an abuse of science. It takes it all the way to the extremes of saying the only way to know anything is through science.
Again, nobody is saying that but you people. And I'd really have to ask, what other ways do you have to demonstrably know something? Not believe, not have faith, but have knowledge. Direct, demonstrable, provable knowledge. And I bet that's something else you can't answer because you're really not talking about knowledge. You're talking about emotional comfort. You want to take the things that you believe for emotional reasons and artificially advance them to the status of knowledge because it makes you feel good to do so. And whether you like it or not, that's not how any of this is ever going to work.
And that is not the only way that we can understand things. We can understand things philosophically and through other measures.
Well, that's your claim. Now, how about you back it up? Because when we're talking about things that are objectively real, and that's exactly what you're doing when you're talking about the existence of gods and demons and angels and all of that other nonsense, then philosophy and so-called other measures are entirely useless. You need to use the right tool for the right job, and you're insisting that because the right tool doesn't find any credibility in your beliefs, that you can just make up another tool, a tool that has never been shown to actually work, so that you can continue to irrationally believe in things that you want to believe in. Because this isn't about reality. You people don't care. This is about feelings. But because the facts consistently prove that the things that you believe are irrational, you arbitrarily insist that there's this other way, a completely undemonstrated, unverified, and untestable other way that makes the things that you wish were true actually true. Prove it! You can't. You just make these silly videos on the internet speaking to the ignorant because you've got nobody else. If you want to talk about concepts, fine. Use philosophy. God isn't a concept. You think he's real. Thus, you have to use science. And guess what? Science says you're nuts. So stop hiding behind nonsensical words and empty claims and actually put up or shut up. But we all know you can't prove it and you won't shut your flap. Why am I not surprised?
Bum